بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Hal, circumstantial state. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Today we begin a new lesson on a very important topic in Arabic grammar, and that is hal, pronounced hal. This is a beautiful and subtle topic because it helps us describe the state or condition in which an action is taking place. In other words, hal tells us how someone was or in what state something happened at the time of the action. The page begins by defining hal in a clear way. In Arabic grammar, hal represents a circumstance, and it appears in the mansub state. This means it usually comes with fatha, because grammatically it is mansub. Its role is to indicate the condition or state of the subject, or even sometimes the object, at the time the action occurs. This is very important. Hal does not describe the verb itself. It describes the condition of the person or thing connected to the action while the action is happening. Look at a very simple example. Ja'ani Zaidun Rakiban. Zaid came to me riding. Here, the action is ja. He came. But the word rakiban tells us the state in which Zaid came. He did not simply come, he came riding. So rakiban is the hal. Then there are two very useful examples to show that hal can describe either the doer or the receiver of the action. The first is the example of the active side. Ja'a rakidan. He came running. Here the word rakidan is the active participle describing the state of the subject while he is performing the action of coming. So this is a hal describing the doer. The second example is from the passive side. Wujid al-kitabu mumazzakan. The book was found torn. Here mumazzakan is the passive participle. It is describing the condition of the book at the time it was found. So this is a hal describing the object or thing affected by the action. This is a very important point. A hal may describe the subject, the object, or in some contexts, both, depending on the sentence. Then the page introduces two key terms. First, hal itself, which is the word that describes the circumstance. Second, dul hal or sahibul hal, which means the person or thing whose circumstance is being described. So in the sentence, Ja'ani Zaidun Rakiban, the word Rakiban is the hal, and Zaidun is the dul hal, because he is the one whose condition is being described. Hal describes the state of the action of the verb, but not of the verb itself. This must be understood carefully. In the example, Zaid came to me riding, the hal does not describe the verb came. It describes Zaid while he came. So the grammar is connected to the action, but the description belongs to the person or thing involved in the action. Now let us go through the numbered rules one by one. The first rule says that the hal will describe the state of the subject, the object, or even both, and that together the hal and the dul hal form a phrase-like relationship. This means students must always ask, who is being described by this hal? That is one of the first keys in identifying it. The second rule says that the hal will be in the mansub state, and it must usually be an ismul mushtaq, such as ismul fa'il or ismul maf'ul. In other words, hal is very often a derived noun in the accusative case. So if you see a mansub, active participle, or passive participle giving a temporary state, that is a strong sign that you may be looking at a hal. The third rule is extremely important. The dul hal is usually definite, while the hal itself is usually indefinite. This is one of the key grammatical markers. The one being described is usually already known or identifiable, while the hal comes as an indefinite descriptive state. The page also reminds us that the hal agrees with the dul hal in things like number and gender, but not necessarily in i'rab or noun type. The fourth rule says that when hal and dhul hal combine inside a sentence, we may get what is called jumlatul haliyah, a circumstantial sentence. The page gives the example, dakhaltul masjida tahiran. I entered the mosque in a state of purity. Here, tahiran is the hal, and the hidden ana inside dakhaltu is the dhul hal, because I am the one being described as entering in that state. Then the fifth point is marked as a special note, and it is a very important reminder. A jumla or shibhu jumla after ma'rifah becomes hal, and a jumla or jar majroor after nakira becomes sifa. This is a very powerful distinction. If the phrase comes after something definite, it tends to function as hal. If it comes after something indefinite, it tends to function as sifa. This is one of the major keys that students must remember when distinguishing between hal and sifa. So the summary so far is, hal is a circumstantial description in the mansub case, showing the temporary state of the subject or object at the time of the action. It is usually indefinite, while the one it describes is usually definite. This page is teaching us that hal does not come in only one form, but in more than one form, and this is very important for students to understand from the beginning. Sometimes the hal comes as a single word, which the page calls mufrad, and sometimes it comes as a whole sentence, which is called jumlatul haliyah. When the hal is a single word, its i'rab is mansub, and it is usually an ismul mushtaq, such as ismul fa'il or ismul maf'ul, because these are very suitable forms for describing the state of the subject or object at the time of the action. So, for example, in ra'aytu zaydan ja'lisan, the word ja'lisan is a single word, hal, in the mansub state, and it tells us the condition in which Zayd was when he was seen. Likewise, in dakhaltul masjida tahiran, the word tahiran describes the state of the speaker while entering the mosque. But the page also teaches that hal may come not only as a single word, but as a sentence, and when that happens, it is called jumlatul haliyah. This sentence hal may be either a nominal sentence or a verbal sentence, and if it is a verbal sentence, it may contain either a madi verb or a mudari verb. In this case, the whole sentence functions circumstantially and is understood as fi mahalli mansub, meaning that the sentence as a whole occupies the place of a mansub hal. The page then explains an important rule called wa'ul haliyah. When the hal comes as a sentence, especially with a single word past or present tense verb, there must usually be some kind of connector linking that sentence back to the dhul hal, the one whose state is being described. Very often, this connector is a waw at the beginning of the sentence, along with a pronoun. So, for example, in ra'aytu zaydan wa huwa yadribu, the clause wa huwa yadribu is not just another separate sentence. It is describing the state of Zayd at the time he was seen. So it becomes jumlatul haliyah. The page also shows that this connector may sometimes be another clear grammatical link to the sahibul hal, not always only the waw. Then the page gives Qur'anic examples marked in red, such as wa antum ta'lamun and wa antum hurumun, where the sentence after the waw describes the condition in which the addressed people are doing the action, and so those become examples of sentence hal. So the overall lesson of this page is that hal may appear either as a single mansub word or as a whole sentence, and when it appears as a sentence, it usually needs a connector, often the wa'ul haliyah, to tie it back to the one whose state is being described. Now we come to the third page of this lesson on hal, and this page is more advanced than the earlier ones, so we need to go slowly and understand the structure carefully. The main subject of this page is double jumlatul haliyah, meaning that in one passage there can be more than one circumstantial description, layered one inside another. The page begins with the famous Qur'anic phrase, يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا, which means they enter into the religion of Allah in groups. Now the page then places this phrase inside a bigger sentence from Surah An-Nasr, وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا, meaning, and you will see the people entering into the religion of Allah in groups. This is where the lesson becomes subtle. The page is showing that there are two levels of hal here. The first hal is the whole clause يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا in relation to an-nasa. In other words, when the sentence says وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ, and you will see the people, the next clause tells us the state in which the people are being seen. They are being seen while entering into the religion of Allah. So this entire clause functions as Jumlatul Hal 1. Then, inside that clause, there is another hal, which is the single word afwajan, meaning in groups. This word describes the state in which whom, the hidden subject of yadkhuluna, are entering. They are not simply entering, they are entering group after group or in crowds. So afwajan is hal 2 inside the first hal clause. This is why the page labels one as Jumlatul Hal 1 and the other as Jumlatul Hal 2. The first one is the larger circumstantial clause. The second one is the inner circumstantial state attached to the hidden pronoun of the verb yadkhuluna. So the key lesson here is this. Sometimes one hal may itself contain another hal. Arabic can build layers of circumstance. Now look at the explanation boxes on the page. One of them says that hal, mufrad here, is attached to dulhal yadkhuluna, whom. This means the single word hal, afwajan, belongs to the hidden pronoun whom inside yadkhuluna. That is very important. Students must not automatically assume the hal always belongs to the nearest visible noun. Sometimes it belongs to a hidden pronoun inside the verb. Then the page explains the two meanings separately. It says, hal 2 equals. They are entering into the religion of Allah in the state of groups after groups. Hal 1 equals, and you will see the people in a state while they are entering into the religion of Allah. This is an excellent breakdown. It teaches students to separate the outer state from the inner state. Now the next table gives a series of Quranic examples of hal, and these must also be explained carefully. The first example is Rabbirhamhuma kama rabbayani sagira, meaning, my Lord, have mercy on them as they raised me while I was young. Here, sagira means young, and it is describing the state of the speaker when the raising took place. So this is a hal showing the state at the time of the action. The second example is yaslaha madmuman madhura, meaning they will burn therein in a state of being condemned and rejected. Here, madmuman and madhura are both circumstantial descriptions. They tell us the condition in which the punishment happens. So this is a strong example of hal describing the state of the object or people at the time of the event. The third example is wa amma man ja'aka yassa, meaning, but as for he who came to you striving. Here yasa is a verbal clause functioning as hal. It is describing the state in which the person came. He came while striving, while hurrying with concern. So this is a good example of sentence hal. The fourth example is watarakuka qa'iman, meaning, and they left you standing. Here qa'iman is a very clear single word hal. It describes the state of the person who was left behind. They did not merely leave you, they left you standing. The fifth example is وَيَنْقَلِبُ إِلَى أَهْلِهِ مَسْرُورًا, meaning, and he returned to his people in happiness. Here Masrura describes the state of the person as he returns. So again, the action is return, and the hal tells us the emotional state during that return. Then another example is وَنَحْشُرُهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ عَلَى وُجُوهِهِمْ أُمْيًا وَبُكْمًا وَسُمًّا, meaning, we will gather them on the day of resurrection, on their faces, blind, dumb, and deaf. Here Umyan, Bukman, and Summan are all hal. They describe the state in which the gathering takes place. So here, we even have multiple hal words in one sentence. And finally, the page gives فَخَرَجَ مِنْهَا خَائِفًا, meaning, so he left the city in a state of fear. Here, خَائِفًا is the hal. It describes Musa's condition at the time of leaving. More examples of hal in the Qur'an. Now let us go through some advanced level examples one by one. The first example is from Surah Al-Baqarah 249. The hal given is yasumunakum, meaning they were afflicting you. And the sahibul hal is alu fir'auna, the people of Pharaoh. The full sentence tells us that Allah saved Bani Israel from Fir'aun's people while they were afflicting them with a horrible torment. So here, the present tense verbal clause, yasumunakum, is functioning as hal. It tells us the condition in which those people were at that time. This is a good example of a mudari verbal sentence used as hal. The second example is from the same verse, again 249. Here, the hal is yudabbihuna, meaning slaughtering your sons, and again, the sahibul hal is alu fir'auna. This means that the people of Pharaoh are described in the state of slaughtering the sons. This is another example of a verbal hal, and it shows how the Qur'an can describe the ongoing condition of a people through a present tense verb used circumstantially. The third example is from Surah Al-Kahf 1879. The hal is yamaluna, meaning working in the sea, and the sahibul hal is masakin, poor people. The full meaning is, the ship belonged to poor people while working in the sea. Here again, the verbal sentence is describing their state. So this is another example of a mudari clause as hal appearing after the noun it describes. The fourth example is from Surah Al-Kahf 1816. The hal here is yanshur lakum rabbukum, meaning your Lord will spread for you mercy. And the sahib al-hal is understood from the command structure, connected with those told to seek refuge in the cave. Here, the state is not just a simple adjective. Rather, the clause gives the surrounding condition in which the refuge is sought. This is a more subtle example and reminds us that hal can sometimes come as a full clause, giving a living circumstance. The fifth example is from Surah Al-Baqarah 274. The hal is sirran wa alaniyatan, meaning secretly and openly, and the sahibul hal is whom in yunfikuna, those who spend. The verse speaks about people who spend their wealth by night and day in secret and in public. Here the hal comes as a pair of circumstantial expressions, describing the manner in which the action of spending occurs. The sixth example is from Surah Al-Baqarah 275. The hal is yaqumuna, meaning they stand, and the sahibul hal is aladina yakuluna riba, those who consume usury. The verse says that they will not stand except like the standing of one driven mad by shaitan. So here, the state of standing is part of the circumstantial meaning. It gives us a vivid picture of how they will rise. The seventh example is from Surah Al-Fath 48:29. The hal is ruk'an sujjadan, meaning bowing and prostrating. and the Sahibul Hal is the pronoun in tarahum, you see them. The verse says, you see them in a state of bowing and prostrating. This is a very clear example of single word hal, because both words are mansub and describe the visible state of the believers. The eighth example is from Surah Al-A'raf 7:143. The hal is dakkan, meaning collapsed to dust, and the Sahibul Hal is al-Jabal, the mountain. The verse says that when his Lord appeared to the mountain, he made the mountain collapse to dust. Here dakkan is the resulting state of the mountain. So this is another example of a single word hal describing the condition into which something entered. The ninth example is from Surah An-Nisa 4:100. The hal is muhajiran ilallah, meaning while migrating to Allah, and the Sahibul Hal is man yuhajir, the one who leaves his home. So the verse describes a person leaving his house as a migrant to Allah and his messenger. This is a very strong and clear single word hal with an attached phrase. So what do all these examples teach us? They teach us that hal in the Quran comes in multiple forms. Sometimes it comes as a single mansub word, such as rukka'an, sujjadan, dakkan, or muhajiran. Sometimes it comes as a mudari verbal clause, such as yasumunakum, yudabbihuna, or ya'maluna. Sometimes it comes as a phrase like sirran wa alaniyatan. So this page is the practical proof that the grammar we studied earlier is not theoretical only. It is alive in the Quran. Now let me highlight one especially important lesson from this page. When the hal comes as a mudari verb, it often gives the feeling of an ongoing living state. It tells us what someone was doing, how they were acting, or in what condition they were at that moment. This is why such verbal hal examples are so vivid and powerful. Alhamdulillah, this brings us to the end of this lesson. If you found this video useful, we warmly encourage you to join our online complete self-study course at Al-Qur'an Institute, designed for you to learn at your own time and space, where you will receive unlimited access to our PDF materials, multiple choice questions with answers, exams, and a certificate of completion. You can enroll through our website www.alquraninstitute.net or contact support directly from the website. If you benefited from this video, please like and share, subscribe to our channel, and press the bell icon to receive all future lessons. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make your Quranic Arabic journey easy, fill your heart with clarity and love for His words, and reward you abundantly in this world and the hereafter.